name is Nicole Chamberlain. I'm a composer and a flutist, and the Flute View asked if I would answer some questions about being a composer, being a flutist, and how I got where I am, and what I do all day, and how I make my living. And so I hope to answer those questions. I always kind of improvised on my flute, and I enjoyed writing. I thought new music was film scores because that's all that was available where I grew up in Savannah, Georgia at the time. There was no internet, so what I knew was what was performed for me, and that was at the movie theater. And maybe the newest music I heard with the orchestra was Stravinsky. So that was my exposure. And I went to study at the University of Georgia thinking that's what I would do, was film music, and I also was going to major in graphic design. But I had a history in animation, and so that's what I was going to do. I switched over to 3D animation because that had just become a new major there with Toy Story coming out, and I thought I'd do my own animations and write my own music. And then, you know, plans changed when I found out that I could write concert music and be able to do that, and maybe support my music habit by being a web designer, doing web animation and also web design. That's what I ended up doing. And so I studied with William Davis. We had some good times trying to figure out how I was going to find my voice, which always is a struggle, but was especially a struggle then when I was still trying to learn how to even compose correctly. Just about the time I started to almost find my voice, it was I wrapped up my undergrad and went and worked for a web design company. And so that's how I got kick-started into doing composing. I was doing it for animation for a while, and sometimes I'd write for my friends. The three pivotal moments are really kind of when I had a moment where I almost gave it all up. And the first one was with my teacher, Dr. Ronald Wallen, which a lot of flute players may know from National Flute Association, and have studied with him. He was a wonderful teacher. He taught at UGA for many, many, many years, basically his whole career. Started at Florida State and then went to UGA. But I had a tough time in school. I was my second year. I was getting nowhere. I felt like it was an uphill battle, and it was so tough, and I was in danger of losing my scholarship. And I'd walked in Dr. Wallen's office with a huge speech prepared about how confident I was that I'd get out of music. And all it took was him to look at me. He was like the nicest guy. He was always smiling. He was always upbeat and always positive. And he said he you know, if you did terribly in a lesson, he'd be like, "Oh, okay, well, we're gonna do that again next week." But so for him to talk this frankly was really, really a pivotal moment. I said, I'm gonna quit music. I'm terrible at it. I'm not doing anything really well. And he just looked at me and said, "I think that would be a huge mistake." So I'm thankful that he did that for me, because I walked out of that office and was kind of still like, ugh, I guess I'm going to do this after. I'm going to stick it out. So I'm glad I did. I'm glad he kicked me in the butt that one time to tell me to get it together and just keep going on. The second moment would have been meeting my husband. I had stopped writing. I'd really gotten into being a web designer and put music kind of on the back burner, and I was performing a lot, but I wasn't writing anything. I just didn't want to come home and sit down and write. But my husband was in grad school and was still very excited about writing and very passionate about it. And I just remember looking at him thinking, I used to be like that. That's all I wanted to do. And I didn't know really when that happened. And so his excitement about writing got me back into writing again. It was contagious. It's still contagious. So that was, I almost wasn't writing anymore. I almost kind of stopped. After all that work, I wasn't going to do it anymore. And then the third one was when my husband told me, you know what, I think you've been doing this web design thing long enough, and if you're unhappy doing it, then why are you still doing it? Just quit and teach flute lessons. You're much happier after you teach a flute lesson and write music. And so one guy is responsible for two really awesome things in my life. So I'm grateful for that. Sometimes it just takes the right person if you can't get yourself out of the muck, you know. So it's why it's always so important to me to be supportive of my friends and others, because it can really make a huge difference, even if you don't know it. I use Finale. There's no other reason other than that's how I started learning. That's what I'm comfortable with. It works for me. So that's what I use. I know it's not for everybody, but it works for me. I love it. So I know all my keyboard shortcuts. It's like another language. For me, it'd be like getting a new flute. I don't want to get a new flute. I love my flute. I haven't fallen in love with another flute, and I don't even want to. So I'm pretty loyal, I guess, to that software program for now. I'm not saying I never say never. I learned that lesson. I also said I'd never teach flute lessons, but I love it and I do it. So right now it's Finale. Sheds light on what it's like to be a performer from a composer's point of view. It keeps things a little more real for me. So, and in the front of my mind. So if I'm composing something, I can kind of walk in the shoes of the performer a little bit better because I do it often. My composition teacher, William Davis, was a bassoonist and performed quite a bit, and he was an advocate for performing. Even though your main goal was to be a composer, he felt that was something we need to think about a lot. Sometimes composers forget the amount of practice time, and if it's a matter of practice or if it is not doable. And I am aware of that when I write my music. I am aware if this is going to be difficult. I keep in mind who my performer is when I'm writing music. I generally don't write music anymore unless I know it's going to be performed. For me, that is the end goal, is to hear someone else interpret it and play it and perform it and give it life. I don't like for music to be written and then put on a shelf. For me, that's purgatory. It makes me crazy. So I like to hear music performed, and being a performer, I'll think about that kind of thing. But also being a performer, also it brings freshness to my love of music, because it's a little bit of nothing like a little bit of drama to bring a relationship closer together. And so in this case, being in front of people doing something that can be stressful if I'm not prepared or if the music's really difficult, but it can be also a really fun and beautiful moment to share something with a group of people that it might impact somehow, whether it calms them or gives them new life or is fun for them. I like to do it. It's fun for me, especially if I really love a piece of music. It is the end of it for me if I really love the piece of music. And sometimes I fall in love with a piece of music when I'm working on it and performing it. And it's just a journey that I love taking every once in a while. And I think it's necessary for me to do as a composer. I like performing my own music, but I kind of prefer it if someone else plays it, because I know there's a lot of flutists out there that are incredible, and when they perform my music, that's the best to hear someone. You write something. When I'm sitting down and I write something, and I know like it's someone like Mary Matthews is gonna play it. Like I can write whatever I want. And I can just sit there and think in the back of my mind, oh, I'm so glad I'm not playing this. So I can write for more challenging for a better player. And but I still like performing, and I like playing my music every once in a while, because I write what I like to play, the kind of things I like to play. So I'm addicted to performing. That's how I first got introduced to music, and It's going to be something that I will hopefully never have to say goodbye to in any capacity. I do teach flute. Sometimes I'll teach composition if someone is interested. But I teach a lot of flute. I teach a lot of middle schoolers. I love it. I teach a lot of high schoolers. I love them too. I don't teach a lot of college kids. Usually I try to get them to, I don't teach at a college. I teach privately. So that's the main reason. And the other reason I don't, I'll teach even if I'm teaching my students all the way through college and they stay in Atlanta to go to Georgia Tech or Agnes Scott or Emory or Georgia State. I usually push them to try to find a new teacher. I mean, at that point, if they've been with me for like 7 years, it's probably time for them to spread their wings and find another teacher who might see something that I missed, or just to get new experiences from different teachers. And it's good. It's good to mix it up every once in a while. So I teach 20 to 30 students. I teach at a wonderful location 2 miles from the house. I inherited a wonderful studio from a flute teacher whose husband who was in the Army band, got restationed somewhere else. And I was lucky enough, I had just quit my job, so I just kind of slipped right in. And I teach at Carreri Music. Many flutists might know Jeannie Carreri, who is the principal at the Atlanta Ballet and does all sorts of different orchestras and freelance opportunities around here. She's a wonderful player, and so the fact that she runs that store, makes all the decisions, it's very flute friendly, and so it's a very great place to teach flute. And I guess that's it. As far as teaching, I teach privately. I teach flute sectionals. It's, who would have thought? I always said I'd never end up like my mom or my sister and teach for a living, but most of my paycheck, if you call it a paycheck, comes from teaching students. It's great. I love it. Professionally, I'd like to compose more. I mean, and if I could compose, and make a living at it, and that's it, that'd be great. I don't know if I'd ever totally give up performing. Or even really teaching for that matter. I'd like to have a handful of students. I do love teaching. It's a nice break, and it gives me social interaction. When you compose, you're kind of alone a lot. Personally, my husband and I, we'd like to vacation more. He's not a big traveler like I am. I would like to travel more and see more things. He's fine with traveling as long as it's not overseas or over a big ocean or flying a long distance. But I'm all for it. I mean, I was born in Germany. I was an Army brat. I love getting out and visit, and that's what really inspires me, is seeing and doing new things. It really influences my music. If you see the titles to a lot of my pieces, like Watersheds, and which is the watersheds around here in Atlanta, and French Quarter, and Tamar, which references a trip in the Republic of Georgia when I was younger. I mean, it's those type of things that really do influence my music. It's just new experiences and adventures. Sometimes it's personal, but when it's personal, I don't mention it. I mean, you won't see it in the program notes, because if it's personal, it's just for me, and I don't really let everybody know all the meanings. But for the biggest part, it's new adventures and travels. So that's what I would like to do more of. Those are my personal, professional goals. And I have a wide range of mentors. I had some mentors along the way, and mentors that have been constant throughout. My composition mentor basically was Dr. William Davis. And my flute mentor, who was huge, it was Dr. Ronald Wallen, who has passed. But there's also been new mentors. I mean, you pick up mentors, and some mentors you just lose touch with, or you move, and it just doesn't fit in your life anymore, even though you'd love to see them again and talk to them again. But there's been other mentors. I consider the ladies in perimeter flutes my mentors. They've been there and done that and have lots of advice for me. And if I always have a conundrum, I can ask them. I have two really close friends that are musicians, but from a different angle, and are very thoughtful people. Audrey Murphy and Emily Hackshaw. They've both had an impact in my life, and I met them on Craigslist, which is an interesting story. Before our Facebook and everything, there was Craigslist, as sketchy as it is, and they were looking for a flutist for their wooden quintet. I needed a new performance ensemble, and 10 years ago, and we're still friends today. And if I have any kind of career choice, personal problem or whatever, we can get together and talk it out. And they usually have a different perspective on it that I may have not thought about. So, and you know, I always have my best buddy, my husband, and my parents. I can't believe I've gone this whole interview without talking about my parents, who are not musicians at all. So they come at it from a totally different angle, and we laugh about how my life has ended up, and my mom likes to say I was born with a horseshoe up my rear, because dumb luck. It always feels like dumb luck sometimes that I ran into a certain person at a certain time in my life. And so my parents drove me on all those stupid auditions and recitals, and will drive up still 4 hours or whatever to hear stuff. My in-laws have even gotten sucked into it sometimes. And they came right after we got married. They drove 4 or 5 hours to come to a recital in Pennsylvania. So it's amazing, the people that have been so supportive, and who I can ask for advice on certain things. And even other composers, like my husband's composition teacher, Dr. Nick Demas, has always been, even though I didn't study with him, if I have a question, he's always happy to answer it. So that's always been amazing. That, I don't know, the people around Atlanta are just really nice, I guess. And I've been really, really lucky to have some pretty cool people to ask questions when I get stuck. I have some pretty regular hobbies. Like, I sew terribly. I don't think I really wear much out in public that I've sewn. But I still do it. My mom's awesome. My sister's awesome at it. I am not so much. I love to watch. I was actually a film studies minor. I had 2 majors in college. I had a music major in composition, and I was also a bachelor. I had a Bachelor of Fine Arts in digital media, basically. But also I had a film studies minor, and that's kind of when I got hooked on the classic movies. I always loved watching the black and white movies and stuff with my dad, and then the film studies minor just kind of let it grow, and so now I have a small addiction with Turner Classic Movies, and so I watch a lot of movies. And I have a flute buddy, Lisa Bartholomew, that watches them as well, and so we'll be on Twitter together talking about watching TCM together. So that's one. I have my husband and I were found by 2 dogs. We did not find them. They followed me home, and so I have a dog, a pit bull named Gertie, and we have a mix of everything dog, Annie, as in little orphan Annie, because she did follow me home. Gertie just showed up on our doorstep. In fact, my publishing company, SpottedRocket.com, was originally named for my first dog, who was a Dalmatian, and he ran really fast. So that's why it's called Spotted Rocket. And then I guess I have another quirk, is that I actually play the jaw harp. Not very well either. I don't do anything really well. I just kind of hack my way through things. My parents bought me one. This is not the same one. I lost the other one. My parents bought me one when I was about 8 or 9 on a car ride from Savannah to St. Joseph, Missouri, because that's where they're from. And they bought this in St. Louis, which is about halfway between. So lesson learned for them, but I have played a gig with it before, and I can still play. And you can chip a tooth if you're not really careful. I may not be doing it right. Who knows? So that's how I play it. So those are my hobbies and I guess my quirks. 2 pieces of advice is be kind and be flexible. I don't really enjoy a lot of animosity or confrontation. I don't think it takes a lot of effort to be kind to someone, even if they're not been so great to you. I think it's just more professional to be kind, and it'll make your life a little more enjoyable. There's no reason to get all upset because someone beat you out on an audition. Be nice to them. Be kind to them. You may end up having a friendship with someone who's really awesome as a performer, and you can learn a lot, or that person could help your career in some way, or just the fact that it'll make life a lot simpler when you see that person and you're kind to them. They'll be kind to you, hopefully. Sometimes I know they're not, but just fake it until you break them down. But for me, being kind is number one. And then the other one is being flexible. What you think you would like your career to be, it's always good to have a goal. But just be open to something else coming across and happening. I sometimes end up getting asked to play for ensembles I never would have thought I'd play with. And it turns out to be amazing. I might do something I said I'd never do, like teaching lessons. And that got me out of a career that I really wasn't liking, and that was making my life miserable. And so teaching lessons has been really positive and an incredible experience. And I would have turned it down and said, no, I'd never do that when I was 18. But now I'm 38. So 38 me has a lot more different goals than 18-year-old me. And it's not a compromise. It's just that I didn't get tunnel vision about what should happen. And so I got to experience more things and do more interesting things because I was open to it, and was willing to at least try. I mean, you can always say no later. You can try it. It doesn't work out. Just say no and don't do it. But don't close yourself off to opportunities that may come along. Unless you know your gut. I mean, you got to trust your gut. I guess this is the third thing is if your gut's saying this is wrong, and it's not a fit, then you should listen to it. But try, and if it's not going to cause you any damage personally, psychologically, or career-wise, it can only help to try something new. So I always try to get my students to not think their life has to be one way. That they can do other things. They don't have to do things in a certain order. And success doesn't mean a certain job, a certain amount of money, or having a certain kind of life. It's success for me is, am I happy? And am I with loved ones? And so that's the kind of advice I try to give my students. Figure out what you want, but don't be afraid to try out what a life brings to you. So hopefully I didn't bore anyone answering all my questions. And you can always check out my website, nikkinotes.com. That's NIKKINOTES.com. You can email me with questions, check out my music, commission me. That'd be great. I always like getting new commissions. It doesn't have to be for flute. I love other instruments. I love all the instruments. I haven't been an instrument I haven't liked, really, seriously. So, always ready to try new things, as long as you're willing to work with me. Okay, thank you. I'm going to interject with some more advice. Self-promotion. Have a website, have business cards, get out there, meet people. No one's going to come to you. No one's going to promote you. No one's going to believe in you like you believe in you. You'll have friends and family that will believe in you and grab onto those people, but they're not going to do the work for you. They'll give you opportunities, but you have to do them. And so get your website and get the music out there. Composers, have your music searchable by by instruments. You know, I love going to a composer's site and learning new music, but it's really hard to find that flute piece because I have to wade through all your other stuff and then read the little instrumentation that says flute. So get it out there. Get live recordings the best you can. Write for your friends. So there's just little add-ons to the young advice for young musicians. Because I'm old.